Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So let's continue implementing the core feature of our application. So we have stopped actually in the util folder, and in this folder I'm going to add a new folder. It's going to be called API. So basically the API folder is going to hold the service class that's going to handle the API calls, and we're going to use Axios for that matter. So I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be called API service. As I said before, we're going to use Axios. So we're going to create a new instance. It's going to be private instance axios.create. And we need to configure the Axios client. So now we need to provide the base URL. It's going to be a value that we will be defining later on. And with credentials, I'm going to set it to true. And because we are using XRF protection, I'm going to assign it to true. For me, I don't like to hard code stuff, so I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be called constant export const constants, and the first value it's going to be base URL. I'm gonna pick it up from the environments from Laravel. This is going to be basically the base URL, and I'm going to add API in order not to add prefix every time. And here I'm going to do constants and base URL. So that's pretty much it for the configuration. First function is going to be the get method. So basically we are going to implement the methods here, post, put, and get. So the first one is going to be get, and it's going to be asynchronous, and it's going to give us a DTO. So the DTO that we will use here, it's going to be of type DTO, and it's going to take in parameter the URL here in this case. So I'm going to create here some props that's going to be used for as a parameter. I'm going to call it API service props. It will have the URL for sure, and as an optional parameter, it's going to be the data that we will pass. For example, the form data. So it's going to be of type any. At least this is what Typo or Axios are using when they are dealing with form data. So here I'm going to pass the params, and the params it's going to be of type API service props. And it's going to give us a promise type DTO. How to use Axios? Pretty simple. Get Axios instance. Here we're going to do get, and we need to specify the parameter. But in our case, I need to customize this get method, and I'm going to implement two versions, the raw version and the version that's going to get the data from the API response. So I'm going to surround this block with try catch because it's going to throw an exception. And for the error or the exception, it's going to be of type any, throw custom exception that we're going to create afterward because of readability purposes and reusability purposes. And for the main implementation, we're gonna store the response in a variable because this is asynchronous. It's going to be await Axios instance and get from parameters. Gonna access the URL, and we need to return the response. But as I said, in our case, we need to customize this. So instead of a normal get, we need to specify the parameter, and the parameter it's gonna be basically an API response. So you can do it here actually. So instead of a generic or an any type variable, it's gonna be Axios response, and the type is API response that we have to define afterward. So the API response, we will create here a new class. We're gonna call it API response. It's gonna be a normal class. You can refer to it as a DTO if you will, and it's gonna hold a parameter, a generic parameter of type T, and it will have data as a public property. And for the constructor, we will pass the parameter of type T, and we will assign data to data. So why we are doing this? Just for reusability purposes of type DTO, not of type T, because we are interested in DTO. And we can access the data of data. So we don't have actually to repeat ourselves every time. And we need to create a custom exception here that's going to hold the error messages. So I'm going to create a new function. I'm going to call it a new class. Sorry. It's going to be called API error. In my opinion, you have to do the same thing because you need to make your reusable stuff reusable. And the main objective here is to perhaps in another project, you're going to reuse this same logic. So I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to call it API error, and it's going to extend from the error class. What we need here in this class, we need the error code, the configuration. This is just from Axios again, the request itself, the raw response. So for the constructor of this class, it will have an error as a parameter of type Axios error, and it's going to call super from the parent class error, and let's initiate from error objects. So here's going to be the message, configuration going to be from error config, and so on. And we're going to add just a convenience method. It's going to be called API error. That's going to get for us the stored API error as a string, could be null or undefined. And you might ask, what is error message? As a reminder, in the, for example, user controller, this is the error message I'm talking about. So we are going to retrieve the error messages from our Laravel application. So that's why I have done the response for the particular error, and we're going to get the error message. I guess that I have misspelled this one, so I'm going to do error message here. Otherwise, it's going to be undefined. So that's pretty much it for the error API error. Throw new API error. I'm going to pass the error as a parameter. And I want to do the second version of this get method, which is going to give us the raw response. Because as you can see here, products controller, we have the pagination, and the pagination is a raw response. So it does have only one data key. We need to implement the raw version. I'm going to call it raw get. So basically, this method is going to be used whenever we are going to deal with pagination, and the first get method is going to be used whenever we are going to deal with a normal request. So instead of calling API response, we're going to do here DTO, only the data from the Axios objects. And with the same thing to throw a new exception of type API error. With the same manner post method, and it's going to take in parameter, and as usual, self get's going to be post, and for the data params, that's data. The raw post, perhaps we're going to use it in our projects, we never know. It's going to be called put, and we are done basically with the API service class. It's going to help us actually to make API calls. Add some utility functions. I'm going to call it helpers.typescript, and I'm going to add the utility functions accordingly when we will need them later on in our project. So I guess that's pretty much it. Let's wrap up the video and see if we did not forget anything. And yeah, one thing which is pretty self-explanatory at this point, we need to make this core a module. In the parents folder, create a new file. I'm gonna call it index. There is a problem here. It said cannot find module data or corresponding declaration. Let's go to the data here. And of course, I think that we have forgot the index here. So I'm gonna add index.typescript. So the error should be gone. The same thing for util, because there is nothing actually here to export. Let's do, for example, export function. Let's say, for example, string avatar, and we're going to leave it empty, not implemented. The error is gone. For this one, it should be gone as well. So now we have the core module reusable as a module. So that's pretty much it for the core module. I guess that we have defined here everything. We have defined the DTOs as well as the dependency mechanism, and we have defined the service class that's going to help us to make API calls. I hope you liked the video, and see you in the next one. Happy coding!